So I knew that there was no way out. I knew I was never going to get a fair shake with any of these doctors. I knew I was screwed. I knew I was never going to be treated fairly. It's bizarre to be trapped like that. And you've got no rights because the doctors are communicating with each other. You know you're being misdiagnosed. And you're fighting for your life. You're not sleeping. You're sleeping 3 hours a night. And I hadn't started weaning off of any medications yet. And this doctor continued with the medications, continued, trying every sleep drug possible. I know I'm being misdiagnosed. I want to get into the sleep lab, but they're not accepting my referrals. This doctor, I was so drugged up that I chose to believe that he was on my side. I told him, I'm being just given piles and piles of sleep drugs a night. And I'm saying to him, my body doesn't want to breathe at night. Like I'm dying of something. I get into bed, my body doesn't want to breathe. I'm not sleeping. There's no way he didn't know that I was suffering from the drugs. And I'm sleepwalking and I'm sleep eating from the drugs, from the sleep drugs. And I told him the same thing I told the previous doctor. I think at this point, maybe the drugs are making me sick. I'm being diagnosed with ADHD, seasonal affective disorder, PMDD, depression, anxiety. All the sleep issues are being misdiagnosed. Nobody had ever diagnosed me with PTSD or complex PTSD. What tipped me off years ago was I saw a psychologist and who saw me on all these medications, and I was seeing them for a while, and they're like, well, you have PTSD, right? And I said, no, what's that? And he said they didn't. He said, you know that you have complex PTSD, right? And I said, no, what's that? And he said, well, they told you that you've got PTSD, right? Because he had heard my story. They told you that you've got PTSD, right? And I said, no, what's that? And he's like horrified that, that I'm not being properly diagnosed, right? And absolutely, I have complex PTSD. So that was never diagnosed. That's my diagnosis, right? And I think people with complex PTSD are being misdiagnosed with all sorts of things that they don't have. And most people don't know this or don't understand this. Complex PTSD is not in the diagnostic manual yet. And for good reason, but that's another video. They don't want to put it in the manual, in the diagnostic. They don't want you to have complex PTSD. They want to diagnose every symptom of complex PTSD as a separate disorder so that you can be medicated. It's more beneficial for them if they can diagnose you with a half a dozen disorders and, So I've got this new doctor, and then I said to him, I think I've done everything to get well. Maybe the medications are making me sick or keeping me sick. He told me the exact same words as the previous doctor. You need these medications for the rest of your life. These medications are like a diabetic taking insulin. If you wean off of them, you'll die. You have to be on them for the rest of your life. And I said, do you actually believe that? And again, I'm sitting across from this doctor, a medical doctor, and I literally don't know if he's wrong or I'm wrong. And how do you tell? How do you tell? Can doctors make mistakes? Absolutely. Can a dozen doctors make mistakes? Can 20 doctors make mistakes misdiagnosing one person because they're all negatively influencing each other, because they're all influencing each other, because they've created this years-long narrative, this incorrect narrative about your health issues, your mental health issues. They've created this whole entire narrative that's been going on for years. Can they be wrong? Yes, they can be wrong. And so I went home after that and started secretly weaning off of everything. And, like almost immediately, the depression went away. The brain fog went away. It was like literally me looking at the end of the street and I can't see very far and someone lifting this black blanket off my head. It was like I could see again. PMDD stopped. Seasonal affective disorder stopped. I suffered from seasonal affective disorder for decades. That stopped. PMDD for decades. That stopped. The depression stopped almost immediately when I weaned off of a couple of medications. And my doctor saw the remarkable change in me. Eventually he said, "Wow, you look fantastic. What have you been doing?" But I wasn't sleeping yet. I was still severely sleep deprived. He said, "What have you been doing?" And I said, "Weaning off the medications." He was mortified. He turned beet red and I mean crimson red, like this. Turned, and the heat just rose all the way. And we sat there for an hour, and almost an hour, and he refused to speak. And then he finally said, "Well, maybe we did have you misdiagnosed." But I still wasn't sleeping. I was still on all the sleep medications. I was still on the benzos. And I was on a lorazepam during the day. This tiny little pill. I really didn't even consider it a psych drug. It's one of the most powerful. I mean, this is how ignorant and dumbed down we can be, and with a lack of knowledge, with a lack of, we didn't have the internet. The internet is still relatively new. Young people don't understand that. The internet and all these resources at our fingertips now, it's relatively new. 15 years ago, we did not have the research capabilities and access to information like we did now. You couldn't Google drugs 15 years ago and have the kind of access we have now. Young people have no idea. And so I was still on the lorazepam and on all these multiple sleeping pills, right? And still not sleeping, and couldn't figure it out. And my doctor had sent multiple referrals to the sleep lab, which were denied because they had already created a narrative from that first sleep lab years ago that I didn't take the sleep drugs. I slept. They said I slept 5 hours, no apnea. And what should have happened? Okay, what should have happened? Should I have taken the sleep drugs And then they say, oh yeah, you've got apnea. So I would have been put on CPAP years ago, stayed on the sleep drugs that were making me sick, that were making the apnea worse, that were making how in God's name would I have been on CPAP if I was sleep walking and sleep eating and wandering the house at night? How would that have worked? I would have been constantly getting out of bed and pulling the CPAP machine to the floor and the machine crashing to the floor. How would that have worked? I'm out sleepwalking on the street, dragging this trail behind me of dragging my entrails behind me, this CPAP, this machine hooked to my face, dragging the cord behind me. Like, how the hell would that have worked? I have a vision of myself wandering like a zombie with a nightgown, with the CPAP trailing, with this machine trailing behind me, the long cord, the machine, the hose. I mean, I was literally tortured. Nobody could figure any of this out. None of these doctors could figure out that I was sleepwalking and sleep eating from the Zopiclone and the sleep drugs. So now I've weaned off psych medications. I'm still on lorazepam and all the sleep drugs, and my doctor retires. And then in December of 2017, no, this gets weird and more complicated. Now, I will disclose this. I often leave this out because it gets too complicated for people. So I'm sleeping 3 hours a night for years. Then all of a sudden I start sleeping 18 hours a day around the clock for a year. I've lost my hearing. My hearing is lost for 2 years. Then all of a sudden I go to bed one night. I wake up, my hearing is back, just like that. And now I start sleeping 1 or 2 hours a night. Now I'm fighting for my life. My doctor retired without telling me. Who does that? I'm on all these sleeping pills. I'm sleeping 1 or 2 hours a night. I'm in crisis. I'm running to the ER. They don't know how to help. I'm running to walk-in clinics. All they'll offer is sleeping pills. I'm fighting for my life. How can you go from 3 hours a night sleeping to sleeping 18 hours a night? My hearing's gone. I wake up, the hearing's back and way too loud. And now I'm sleeping only 1 or 2 hours a night. If I had sleep apnea, how is it that I was sleeping? How, like, literally, scientifically, medically, how can you go from sleeping 3 hours a night to 18 hours of restful, restorative sleep? 18 hours of sleep a night for a year, almost a year. And then go to 1 or 2 hours of sleep a night. How is that possible? Anyways, I started fighting for my life, and I'm still on the sleep drugs. I'm still on, I stopped some of them, and I was still on clonazepam and Zopiclone. And I decided that maybe I should wean off of the sleep drugs because maybe they're adversely affecting me. And then that's what I did. All hell broke loose because I was in acute drug withdrawal. I was already sleeping 1 or 2 hours a night. Imagine how out of my mind I was. And then I went into acute benzodiazepine withdrawal. How I was so out of my mind.